Yeah.
Tonight I'm going to inform my audience how the Harlem Renaissance changed African American culture. During 1918 into the early 1930s, some African Americans migrated from the South to Harlem, New York to pursue better lives. This era became known as the Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance was recognized as the new Negro movement and the African American artistic movement in the 1920s. In the 1920s, that distinguished black life in culture. African Americans wanted better for their families, and they wanted freedom from racism in the South. So that's why they moved from the South to the North, for better employment opportunities and for better employment opportunities that occurred during the Civil War. Not the Civil War, the World War One. Sorry.
Yeah.
In Harlem, they created a different style to music, literature, and dance. These were some of many arts that African Americans brought a new meaning to during this time. I'm going to share with you what made music, art, and literature significant to the Harlem Renaissance and give some insight on particular people that aided to the change in the during the Harlem Renaissance. During the Harlem Renaissance, jazz was a major part of music. One very famous musician was Duke Ellington. He was born in Washington, D.C. as Edward Kennedy Ellington, better known as Duke. And he played the piano as a child. His mother taught him she played the piano as well. Once he became a teenager, around 17, he became a professional piano player. He gained popularity during the Harlem Renaissance.
No, I won't hold that against you.
By 1918, he formed a band and played in the clubs over Harlem for many years. He grew a big band face in Harlem's popular nightclub called the Cotton Club. He and his band played there until the mid-1930s. He then started touring the world, and he is known to have written over 3,000 songs. Composers used poems written by African American poets in their songs that would implement the rhythms, harmonies, and melodies of African American music. Langston Hughes was a great author during the Harlem Renaissance era. He wrote books, poetry, and major plays in theater. Hughes' artistic intellect was influenced by his life in New York City's Harlem. His legendary works helped shape American literature and politics. Hughes, like other active in the Harlem Renaissance, had a strong sense of racial pride. Through his poetry, novels, plays, and children's books, he promoted equality, condemned racism and injustice, and celebrated African American culture, humor, and spirituality. He was a graduate of the HBCU, Lincoln University, right here in Chester County, Pennsylvania. In addition to literature, dancing was an important time during the Harlem Renaissance. Josephine Baker played an important role during the Harlem Renaissance. Her exotic sensual act reinforced the creative images coming out of the Harlem Renaissance in America. She was the first African American actress to break free of racial offense. She is known to audience in Europe and the United States as Black Venus, Black Pearl, and Creole Goddess because of her audience and her beautifulness. Many other dancers like Billy Bojangles Robinson were also known during the Harlem Renaissance. There are a lot of other people and things that help make the Harlem Renaissance a very important time in the African American culture. The end of Harlem's artistic era began when the stock market crashed in 1929 and the Great Depression set in. Although the Harlem Renaissance lasted a brief time, it had a great influence on African American people in their literature, arts, and culture.